There have been quite a few attempts over the years to reboot old video game franchises. These reboots have varied in quality, with some being great games, and others being utter shit. Xcom is one of the best examples of a franchise being successfully rebooted in the modern age. For me, Xcom was my very first turn-based strategy game, and at the time I was completely unaware of the franchise's rich history. My first few playthroughs of the game were not very successful, yet I always found myself coming back. There was just something about it. When I was a bit older, I sat down and played the game once more, this time learning from my previous mistakes, and fully immersing myself in the game. It's been quite a few years since I finished the game for the first time, and yet it is one of my most replayed games. There is just so much content in the main game and its expansion, Enemy Within, and that is without even mentioning the Long War, a mod for the game that is so expansive it might as well make the base game a tutorial. I'll mainly be talking about XCOM Enemy Within here, which is the expansion to the main game that adds and builds on the main game so much that I can't really avoid talking about it. XCOM has a lot of replayability. Apart from just changing the difficulty, there are plenty of different options for the campaign that can be applied in the main menu, such as the Iron Man mode, which prevents players from reloading to an earlier save when things inevitably go wrong. On a very first playthrough of XCOM, it really is worth playing the tutorial, not just because it gets you used to the game's mechanics, but because it really succeeds at setting the tone for the game and showing off just how much of a threat the aliens really are, with an intro that reminds me somewhat of the War of the Worlds. One of the most important decisions in a playthrough is actually made very early on, that is deciding where to place XCOM headquarters. Each continent where you can place headquarters has a benefit assigned to it, which will greatly help with one area of XCOM's operations. The bonuses not picked can still be gained later on through covering a continent in satellites to gain its benefits. Going into a level, you have the mission brief and objectives displayed in front of your squad while the game loads. When your squad is deployed from the Sky Ranger, you have no idea where the aliens are, so have to push forward and scout, hoping not to accidentally come across multiple groups of enemies at once. Each member of the squad has 2 action points per turn. Moving a soldier within the blue lines consumes 1 point, leaving another point to perform an action like shooting or using an item such as a grenade. There is an option to push past the blue line up to the yellow one that consumes 2 action points. It can be tempting sometimes to push a squad member just that bit further into the yellow zone to cover just that bit more of ground, but doing so can be extremely dangerous, since it can be so easy to be overwhelmed by alerting too many enemies to your presence at once. Keeping troops in cover is vital to survival, because even a single enemy can take away a large amount of a soldier's health, especially early on in the game. When you do come across enemies, normally they will immediately run to cover. Each of your troops who can see an enemy has a percentage chance to hit them, depending on a variety of factors such as distance, how much cover the enemy is in, etc. Even having a high chance to hit is no guarantee you actually will hit the enemy, something which is a key cornerstone for the game. No matter how thought out your plans are, all it takes is one bit of bad luck for the battle to turn, but that goes both ways. Sometimes you may have a member of the squad fire a shot which seems impossible, only for them to pull it off and get a critical hit. Weapons have a limited number of shots that can be fired before they have to be reloaded again, which takes an action point and prevents the soldier from firing that turn. Although, sometimes it may be better to just swap to a pistol in a tricky situation instead of reloading. The environments are almost completely destructible, with explosives ripping apart buildings, and certain shots being able to put holes in walls when they miss their target. In fact, sometimes it can be a good idea to use explosives to destroy walls to open up lines of sight or get the drop on a group of aliens. All troops can use Overwatch, which prevents any further actions, but lets the soldiers shoot at the next enemy which moves. The enemy AI are not pushovers either, with them being able to use Overwatch and other abilities regularly. The game is infamously unforgiving. A simple mistake may lead to the death of one of your favourite soldiers. Even something so simple as pushing someone forward by even a single tile can make the difference between life or death. Troops that take damage will be wounded after the battle, making them unusable for several days until they have had time to fully heal. The more damage they take, the longer the time before they can be used again. There are 4 base classes in the game, with them being the Support, Assault, Heavy, and Sniper classes, with a 5th class called the Mech Trooper being added with the Enemy Within expansion. Each class can fill multiple types of roles depending on how you level them up. For example, you may want to level the Heavy class to be able to carry more rockets and grenades, or you may want to focus on making the soldier able to suppress enemies. These different options make it so you can have multiple of the same class in a squad, and still have each soldier feel like they have a unique purpose which is best suited to their loadout and skills. Fair way through the campaign, you can conduct research that will give access to what is kind of a 5th class, but not really. This class lets you make use of the psionic powers that some of the aliens have. To unlock this, you must first build a room at base to test which of your soldiers are gifted in using this power. Any who are found to be gifted are given what is essentially a kind of subclass, with them having a second, separate and smaller skill tree that is separate from their class 1. The Enemy Within expansion not only adds the Mech Trooper class, but also the introduction of gene mods. Gene mods can turn an already powerful soldier into a true powerhouse by giving them new abilities such as being able to jump extremely high or having incredible accuracy with guns. Just like with mech troopers and psionic abilities, to make use of gene mods, new facilities must be built at headquarters. Both the mech trooper and gene upgrades are created through the use of the new currency, Meld. In most missions there will be 2 meld canisters that must be collected within a time limit, or the meld will be lost. This encourages a slightly more aggressive playstyle, but it's not forced, since meld is always optional, and a lot of the time you can play as usual and still manage to collect at least 1 canister of meld. The aliens are not the only threat to Xcom, as there is another faction that they need to deal with, Exort, which are added with the Enemy Within expansion, and are a group of humans working to undermine Xcom and support the aliens' invasion. Exalt agents are similar to Xcom soldiers, with them having similar classes and laser equipment which can be looted after a mission and given to your own troops. What separates Exalt from the aliens is that they are far more subtle, with them launching covert operations across the world. In between missions, it is possible to send one of your own soldiers to go and investigate an Exalt cell, to try and get as much info on where they are headquartered. Any soldier sent to do this will be unavailable for missions until they have gathered all the info they need, and a team has evacuated them. As the game goes on, and you conduct several more of these spying missions, Xcom will get more and more hints as to Exalt's location, which is random each playthrough. Using these clues, you can accuse a country of being where Exalt's headquarters is located. If correct, you can immediately send a squad to destroy Exalt once and for all, but if you are wrong, that country will pull out the Xcom project, bringing you one step closer to losing the campaign. Between missions, you'll spend your time managing Xcom from its headquarters, the location of which you picked at the beginning of the game. You can expand the base by excavating blocked rooms and digging deeper into the ground to give access to new areas. As you expand your operations, headquarters will need more power. The easiest way to get access to more power is to build a power generator. But there are also several steam vents within Xcom headquarters, which can have thermogeneration placed on them to further increase power output. The base does actually feel alive, as you can see soldiers going about their off time in the different rooms of the base, and see your other staff hard at work. The management of the base itself is broken down into 6 main areas: mission control, the situation room, the hangar, research labs, engineering, and the barracks. The centrepiece of mission control is the hologlobe, and it is from here that you will launch missions to counter the alien invasion. While in the room, you can pass time and wait for the next set of missions to pop up. The primary type of mission in the game is alien abductions. Before the mission even begins, you are forced to make your decision. There will normally be 3 countries who are being attacked by the aliens and are requesting help, but Xcom can't be everywhere at once, so you need to decide which country is the priority. The countries that you don't choose will have something called a panic meter increased, which if it gets too high may result in them leaving the Xcom project. Each country will offer different rewards for you if you help them, such as scientists, engineers or money. This leads to a careful balancing act between preventing countries from being overrun with panic and prioritising what resources you really need. The Situation Room is a sort of expansion of the Control Room, since this is where you monitor panic among member nations of the Xcom project. Once a month, the Council will give a report with a grade and your monthly income. However, any nations that are experiencing high panic levels might decide to pull out of Xcom, taking their income with them. If 8 countries pull their support for the Xcom project, you will automatically lose the campaign. Every now and again, the Council will request that you go on a special mission for them, which will have some rewards for completing. If you are strapped for cash, the Situation Room gives access to the Grey Market, which is an ideal way to make money. Here you can sell the dead bodies of aliens, or anything related to the aliens really. The catch is that a lot of these items are important for research and development, so selling them is something you have to put a lot of thought into, although there are things that can be sold which have no value. Since you have to pick where you will go on abduction missions, it is inevitable that panic will rise around the world. The most reliable way to reduce panic in a country is by placing a satellite above it. The number of satellites you can have in orbit is limited by the number of satellite uplinks, and if you get a satellite above each council member in a continent, you will unlock their continent bonus. Satellites are prime targets for alien spacecraft, however, so if you don't want your money to go to waste, aircraft need to be stationed nearby to be able to defend the satellite if it is required. Aircrafts can be managed from the hangar screen. Here players can customise the loadout on their existing interceptors, as well as buying more and managing what continents they will be assigned to defend. When an enemy UFO is detected, you can choose between what available interceptors in the region to send to deal with the threat. Fighting UFOs is extremely simple, and early in the game, UFOs shouldn't really be a problem. But as the game progresses and more powerful UFOs appear, you will need to invest in upgrading the weapons on the interceptors, and building upgrade modules to use in combat. Once a UFO is shot down, it is time to assemble a team to launch an assault on the crashed ship, to finish off any survivors, and loot it before further aliens can arrive. The first time this happens, it is a big moment, but quickly becomes routine, especially with the smaller scout ships. The research labs at headquarters is where you can use the prizes you loot off defeated aliens to reverse engineer much of their technology, leading to large technological advancements as a result. While the equipment you have at the beginning of the game is just good enough to deal with the enemies, as the game goes on, you will research and build more powerful weapons and armour for your team, but the aliens will also get stronger, with more powerful aliens appearing as time goes on, leading to an arms race that is a central part of the game. Deciding which research to prioritise is one of the most important elements to the game, especially early on. If you focus too heavily in one section of research, you may end up falling behind in others. For example, focusing on getting better weapons early will really help with dealing with the aliens, but not researching ways to increase the potential of your interceptors will mean you will soon be struggling to protect your satellites from UFOs, leading to increased panic in that country. The speed at which research is carried out can be increased by having more scientists, or with the production of laboratories. The majority of what you unlock through research can be constructed for a price in engineering. Some items need a certain number of engineers to be working for Xcom before they can be constructed, with further engineers going to reduce the cost of production. Workshops can also be built to further reduce this price. Upgrades for a variety of things like medkits and grenades can be unlocked through the foundry. Final area of headquarters is the Barracks. One of the main purposes of the Barracks is to be able to customise the loadout and look of your soldiers. This can also be done when preparing for a mission. The Officer Training School allows for squad-based upgrades to be unlocked, including increasing the size of a squad and increasing experience gained from kills. Medals can be awarded to buff the stats of soldiers. Each medal has 2 different possible buffs that must be picked between. This decision is permanent, and all future medals of the same type will give the same buff. More soldiers can be hired from the same place to offer a stronger backbone of recruits. A smaller part of the Barracks is the Memorial, where all of your killed soldiers have their names displayed, saying how they died and how many missions they were a part of before their death. As might be expected of a game of this type, the story for the game isn't anything special, but it really didn't need to be. What creates the tension in the game isn't the written story, but rather the gameplay, and how, as the game goes on, you develop connections with your soldiers. It really is these connections and stories that develop with your soldiers that really make Xcom special. Every playthrough will have at least one person who becomes your favourite squad member. For example, in one playthrough I had a mission go pretty bad. Two of my favourite soldiers in the campaign quickly were killed, and it looked like the mission was lost. Just when I thought it was over, a relatively low-level sniper I had brought along just to level up, nicknamed Zeus, ended up almost single-handedly taking out the rest of the enemies, and making some insanely difficult shots, leading to the mission being a success. In every playthrough of XCOM and XCOM 2 since, I always get one sniper, and change them to look like Zeus, and give them the same nickname. And, in my opinion, that is what makes XCOM so good. You can become absolutely frustrated by the game so often, and yet still be able to find enjoyment through the scenarios that creates.